Okay. Okay. Thank you very much for coming today to the SPARC seminar. Unfortunately, we cannot have both speakers that we originally announced, and hopefully the reasons that put back the presentation of Lee are not very serious. But we have a very distinguished presenter today, Gregory, who is a specialist on outdoor recreation economy. I have worked with Max in several projects on outdoor in Sheffield, and it has been a privilege. She's extremely well established in her field, and will give us a talk about outdoor recreation and inclusive participation. Yes, Max.
Thank you for your kind words, Themis. I'm just thinking about what we were talking about, marketing and backdrops and so forth yesterday. I realize I've got some kind of instructional poster like directly behind my my head, so I don't quite know where to position myself here. But thank you everyone for joining. We have got a small but incredibly select audience in the room. An elite audience, I'd say, in the room. So big thanks to these guys for taking the trouble to come in 3D, and thanks to you online as well. So crack on with these slides. I assume this presentation will be much shorter than the slot in your diary, so hopefully that gives you a little bit of flexibility this afternoon. I'll not try and cover my time on Leeds as well. Can anybody online give me a thumbs up that you can see the slides that are being shared? That'd be really helpful. Oh, good. Right, lovely. Thank you. Okay, so a quick introduction. I've put 3 words up there which are important to me, and I think summarise what I do quite nicely in this role. Been with the university for around 20 years, so hopefully many of you know me quite well by now. I'm obviously based within the sport industry research group, but aside from that post, I would like to think that the way that I work collaboratively across the university, it is, well, quite exemplary really, in terms of I've founded and I chair 2 research groups that include people from across all 3 colleges and from all disciplines. I think, you know, hand on heart, I can say that I do work very collaboratively, sorry, with those particular groups. I'm also the secretary and have been the vice chair of the European Network for Outdoor Sport, which enables me also to bring some European perspectives into this, some insight, and to have those contacts and networks and shared good practice at a European level as well. I'll also mention just really quickly, not just because John's in the room, but I do have, very gratefully, have a Shrift Award, which I think is maybe the only one in sport from this initial route. Yeah, so I just wanted to flag that on what I'm doing in that, and to offer, if anyone does, if there's any shared learning from that process that I can help anyone with, then I'd be very happy to do so. But that is more in my kind of traditional area, which is looking at the question on the bottom really there, what do we need to do to get more people to move, and to look at physical activity, outdoor recreation and active environments quite inclusively across those sectors, and look at what needs to change to make it easier to get more people moving. So that particular Shrift Award is on active travel and growing our active travel research group. Within that group, we've got everybody from artists to engineers to behavioural change experts. So if anybody has an interest in, I'm not talking lycra clad cyclists, but from a more rounded perspective, active environments, building places that make it easier for us to move by active means, then, you know, please do get in touch and I'll share anything I can on that. So over to the topic of today. I wish I had got Donna here, and she did send her apologies from to me yesterday, but the purpose of this was looking at inclusion in outdoor recreation. It was actually something that I presented at a conference last September, although in a very different format. It was actually a 90-minute interactive workshop that we had with about 25 to 30 outdoor recreation professionals. So kind of difficult to give a synopsis and put it into this format where it's more me talking at you rather than having those interactive discussions. But this is very important to everything that I do in the European network of outdoor sport and to the work that we do that's UK based. And it was a little bit of myth busting really about what we mean by inequality, why this is really important. I'm sure there's no one in the room or on the call that wouldn't agree with the fact that everyone should have equal access to sport and physical opportunities, and we know that not to be the case. I know when we talk about inclusion that that disability is something that immediately springs to mind, and just wanted to make the point really clearly that disability is not we're not talking about a minority cohort of people here. We're talking about 20% of the population, adult population, describing themselves as having a disability or an impairment. So we're not looking for a solution for the few here. We're looking for a way of working that works for the many. So it's really important to kind of set that context at the beginning. But also equally important is when we're talking about inclusion, and so it'd be lovely to have Donna here because I'm no EDI expert on this. I've just had the pleasure of working with the Activity Alliance and in projects that have done really good, really powerful inclusion work. So I'm just sharing a bit of my perspective on that. But one of the really important things to think about when we look at inclusion is we're not talking about catering specifically for people with disabilities. We're talking about working in ways that engage everybody. So irrespective of whether people have a disability or impairment or multiple impairments, we're talking about if we use really good principles, those principles will work for everybody, not just those people with a particular, let's say, lack of ability at that point in time. So one of the points I made up on the slide there is ability and functionality of people is not a linear thing. So when we're talking about inclusion, we're talking about the need for people to adapt and be flexible and be responsive to delivering physical activity and sport to whoever they've got in front of them at that time in whatever state that person is in. So people's mental health is on a huge spectrum from poor to good. People's physical health is on that same huge spectrum. So in any one given day, people may have been ill, they may be recovering from an injury, they may be bloody boiling hot for days and they've not slept very well. But these are all things that we need to kind of adapt and kind of respond to when we're delivering or promoting any sport and physical activity, so that those activities remain inclusive for people. So a focus on what people can do, not what people can't do or how they're defined. So what we did in the conference in Denmark was at this point was kind of had a wide discussion about what we mean by inclusion. And it was the principles I just spoke about on the last slide, that we're talking about a way of thinking, not a way of doing here. And we're thinking about what people's needs are at any one given point in time, and the fact that they change like across the life course of a person, across a year, across a week. People have got different needs at different points in time. So what can we do to make people feel particularly included? And I think looking who was there at the away day yesterday, I think a couple of the people on screen and within the room. But I think the presentation that Craig Mahoney was giving yesterday gives some really nice examples of inclusive practice. He talked about how when he was the VC, he would value and engage with the security staff in the same way that he would engage with the senior executives within the team. He shared an example on screen about NASA and about the janitor at NASA, and how when he was asked what his job description was, what his role was, he said his role was to get people to the moon. You know, so just valuing people and making sure that everyone's included at all levels was, you know, a really strong message that I took from yesterday, and really kind of resonates with what we're talking about today. So just to reiterate that point a little bit really about current state, I think I need to ask people how they're feeling today and what their needs are, because it's generally feeling hot. Primary need is an ice cream, isn't it? Rather than people wanting to go for a lunchtime run or cycle. But it's a really important question. It's what we had deliverers, practitioners in front of us, and we were trying to get them just to think about how they deliver, how they shape and tailor their delivery to what people need at particular points in time. Someone may have been a great athlete, but they may have been ill or injured, and they're at this point in time, or having poor mental health, their well-being might be low, their confidence might be low. So how can we keep engaging those people in ways that are appropriate for them? So again, I just gave a couple of examples of ways that people can feel included, and how we can kind of think what those barriers are and how people's barriers to being active might change over time. So the example I was going to share, and I could have picked a million different ones to use this, but sorry, a million different examples to demonstrate this, but I'm sticking with what we used in the conference. Was just, we picked from the conference program an example of a orienteering activity that was obviously not mandatory, but people were encouraged to come along as a way to get to know each other and do some team building. It was actually a great way to do that, and I did suggest to Ruth when we were looking for ideas for our well-being that kind of orienteering event that people do in teams, it's a really effective way of getting people kind of working together and getting to know each other. So hopefully at some point in the future we'll have a go at this in practice. But as part of the first day of the conference, there was this advert in the program for orienteering. So what we did in the group session was kind of picked through it and looked at things about that advert that might attract people to want to sign up to the activity, but also barriers that might put people off signing up. And there's various words on there about, you know, it's saying it's very easy, it's something that's been carried out in teams, it's for fun, there are different paces and things like that involved. There's getting to know the people, but also getting to know the place. So there are a few different kind of motivations to that. And some bottom bit of that line said there will be small team exercises and the teams must solve in order to advance the activity. So that was a general description, and in a very non-critical way to the conference organisers, we then picked this apart to see what the barriers to this kind of thing might be. So bear in mind, we've got a group of people that are very predisposed to being physically active. We've not got just a cross sample of the population that I've plucked off Ecclesall Road. We've got people that are involved in outdoor recreation as participants and deliverers. So you'd think, great, these people are definitely going to be keen on orienteering, but we were picking through that description and looking at things like fitness levels, confidence in a social setting, getting to know people. Even the most confident of people, you know, sometimes are shy about kind of going up and doing that. I know we have to get over this at conferences and there is a requirement to network, but to form those teams and start those discussions with people, The description said it was a race. So again, do people feel a bit inadequate about that? Do they feel that they're going to be able to, do they feel they're going to let their team down, or how are they going to be able to contribute to that team? There's loads of people like, can't read a map, I've got no sense of direction, all those kind of comments are coming through. Plus any kind of physical needs. And what they actually did with those activities as part of that was all kinds of little multiple tasks, where at one point we were given a blindfold, and we were asked to, two people were blindfolded, the other person had to guide them through a kind of quite tricky off-road course without any touch. There were other little activities as part of that, which were all part of team building, all part of building trust and relationships within each other, but were also important to make us put ourselves in other people's shoes and help us to understand what barriers other people might face and how we perceive those particular barriers. So I'm going to take a lead from Craig's presentation at the away day yesterday, where, for those of you there who remember, he was talking about memory tours. He said there'll only be certain bits of a presentation that anyone would remember, and it would be the beginning, the end, and then he showed us this picture. I'll see if John pulls a face at this, but as somebody with their finger up their nose and right into their eyeball, which is going to stay with me in a presentation, like, but just to make the point of how, you know, you have to do certain things to make things memorable. So I'm going to embarrass myself deliberately at this point, which I hope will make you remember some of these inclusion messages that I'm going to share. So picture in the top right is actually myself with Casper and Renee, who they picked the teams by going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like that. So completely random selection. However, I got paired up with two guys that were elite athletes that had just done the UTMB extreme trail race in Chamonix, and then just grabbed hold of me and went, come on, we go. And then just started sprinting through the streets of Denmark. I was absolutely terrified, I'm not going to lie. And thankfully, I do some distance running, but I'm not a fast runner. And literally what you can't see from this photo is that Casper is wearing compression socks. So he stood there warming up and stretching, ready to go on this. There's other groups that are wearing their jeans, chatting in a social way, getting to know each other, asking about family. Our team's not doing any of that. We're just running like our lives depend on it through the streets of Denmark. Anyway, we survived. Obviously, we won by about 10 checkpoints. It was insane the speed we were expected to go, but then was presented as a prize with these bloody things. Flamingo, I don't know if you can see those, well, flamingo sunglasses. I'm 45, not 4. So that was my reward for managing to keep up with those two athletes through the streets of Silkeborg. But hopefully that gives you something not quite as memorable as the eye poke, but, you know, an embarrassed, red-faced individual all the same. Throughout the conference, I kept them being requesting to put the glasses back on, just to show off the pink flamingo glasses. So this is maybe not good practice in terms of inclusion or helping people to kind of, you know, fit in with the particular environment that we're going for. But anyway, I thought that would be a nice, oh, sorry, there we go. Look at those Bobby Dazzlers in the corner there. So we then talked in the conference about bad practice, about things that we can improve on, about good practice and how we can learn and share from each other. And we talked about some of the principles behind inclusion, such as human-centered design, using very positive language, normalizing things, making sure that we're not kind of flagging up anything about anybody. We're just taking each person as an individual where they're at that point and trying to adapt and cater for those individuals, not putting pink flamingo sunglasses on there and nothing of the sort. So the two examples that I wanted to share, this first one is from the Activity Alliance, who many of you might remember these guys as previously as the Federation for Disability Sport. I've had the real pleasure of working with Activity Alliance on 2 different projects over the last 4 years, and they're absolutely incredible in terms of inclusion. So the principles behind their projects are not to segregate and put on a disability sport activity. It is to build on their 10 principles of inclusion and offer those across everything that they do. And as I said at the beginning, common sense will say that if I read you out these 10 principles, that our Activity Alliance have been working to these principles since 2014. These are not new. This is not a new EDI tick box that's going on. These are embedded principles within that organisation, and they live and breathe inclusion. So they're talking about things like using the right channels, taking sport and physical activity into someone's locality, looking at the person, not their impairment, considering their life story and changes over time, including people, welcoming them, working with their values, reassuring them, listening to them and showing them. So if we're trying to design a sport and physical activity program for anybody, if you're thinking about your students or how you design any particular class, these principles of finding out what people want, what their experience is, listening to people, getting their confidence, getting their trust, working with them to create opportunities. These are all important principles that you will embed into everything that you do, whether that's with students, whether that's with the community, whether that's in contract research that you deliver. So they're all about shifting the narrative, changing people's perceptions, not thinking about a disability or an impairment or what that means to that individual, but thinking about how an activity can be promoted in a way that makes everyone want to come along to that activity. The second example was I presented this session with Dr. Chris Kay and Rebecca Sutton from Leeds Beckett University. For the last 7 or 8 years, these guys have been delivering the Battle Back programme, which is supported by the Royal British Legion, and it's about giving opportunities to wounded, sick or injured military personnel, and actually enabling those people to build their confidence, develop, grow as a person, and help them to support their recovery. So inclusion is embedded throughout this programme, and it's about what people can do, not what they can't, about inspiring them, reassuring them, offering support, giving them informed choices. And it doesn't have to be rocket science, this. It can be very easily kept to be really simple things that make sense, and following common sense, putting yourself in people's shoes and treating people how you would want to be treated. One of the things about inclusion is the people that would always benefit the most from physical activity and sport opportunities, I think this is a point Simon made yesterday, are always the people that are further behind, or that are kept from those opportunities for a number of different barriers. But they're often the people that will benefit most, but it's hard to get, hard to ensure that that engagement is there and that those opportunities are shared equally. This programme was I've put all the links to this in here and the resources, so you can have a quick read of these yourself, but it's all about just finding ways to listen, grow confidence, co-create, and just change perceptions, change the way that we think about things. So the resources that I just mentioned are on this link and up in screen, or if anyone drops me an email, I'll happily share those over with you. The Activity Alliance, from the programme that we did the evaluation for, which was a consolidation of learning across that programme, has produced a series of resources that are available on that website, which really kind of dig into some of these principles and how we can offer really good practice, how we can learn and share from each other. And there's also a lot of Sport England guidance and wider sector guidance. I the examples I've provided on the slide there were coming from the UN and looking about their advice on providing inclusive response, about non-discrimination, about intersectionality, accessibility, participation, accountability, and data disaggregation. So all things that are key priorities in the work that we do. And I think the intersectionality one in particular, which is thinking about all the different multiple social and political factors which influence an individual. So not putting somebody in a box as that's a woman or that's somebody from a particular minority group or demographic group. Not thinking about those protective characteristics as individual things, but accepting that somebody might be a woman with impairment from a particular demographic background, and not pigeonholing that women want this, or people with impairments want this, but seeing those people as individuals. And I think I'm much more comfortable talking about my usual research areas of outdoor recreation and active travel more broadly, and creating those active environments. But inclusion is absolutely critical to all those areas as well. And I think within active travel, there's a really good example of how we view people as a car driver, a cyclist, a walker, without often realizing that most people travel via multiple modes. If you're getting a bus, you've probably walked to your bus from home, and then you've at the other end of your journey, you've walked to your destination point. So you're a walker and you're using public transport. I cycle sometimes I have to go in the car. We're not just a cyclist or a walker. So it's really unhelpful pigeonholing people into these particular groups. We need to acknowledge that people are all kinds of different things, have all kinds of different priorities, and can't just be a tick box to say, yeah, we thought about what women want, it's over there. So that was it from myself, really. I hope people are saying, I know it's a kind of non-traditional presentation. I know I'm not sharing whole reams of scientific or empirical evidence with you to pick through. But what hopefully I'm doing the same as we were doing with Craig yesterday is just sharing some viewpoints and thinking about what needs to change, and just sharing some food for thought on all this. It's not rocket science. It doesn't, I can't give you all the answers, because those answers need to be specific and bespoke to whoever you're working with and in whatever context you're working with. But there are some great examples out there. There are some excellent resources. There are people like Donna Woodhouse, who's our EDI lead, who again have great examples of how we can implement good practice. And I hope people will take the opportunity to, next time that they're preparing or designing a session for students, or designing a research program, just to think through how inclusive they've been with what they're doing, and to make sure that they're not just trying to tick boxes, but they are genuinely trying to find ways of including everybody. And yeah, my email address is on the bottom of there. So if anyone does want to connect or share or learn, I think we're always strong with doing this together, and I'd appreciate that contact from people. So thank you.
Do you want to direct the questions?
Sure. Do you want me to unshare this? Have we got audio back working for the incoming audio? Perfect. Is there anybody online or in the room that wants to comment, wants to signpost us to something that they've worked on, or that they've found particularly helpful in this area, or to ask any questions? Please feel free.
report, mentioned a bit on sharing bad practice. And obviously, it's really important. We find a lot of the time the organisations do the work that don't want to appeal to their funders when errors. We have the same problem from the valuation perspective. In that we're being funded to evaluate the programme, we don't want to directly say these are the elements that are terrible. So I was wondering if you've got any advice, thoughts, tips, how to go about it.
There's a brilliant post on LinkedIn. I don't know if anyone saw it yesterday from Tim Finch's in the evaluation team at Sport England, and he was sharing a post on that they'd intended to issue some evaluation guidelines and a set of questions for evaluation, which were all about you know, banks of questions and types of questions that could be used for certain things. And it was a really honest and transparent post, which I thought was brilliant, saying we started this piece of work, and then as we've got through it, we've realized it doesn't actually make sense because there isn't a set of questions. You know, you might as well go on ChatGPT and ask it to produce you a set of questions for whatever it is. That there isn't everything needs to be bespoke. There isn't a certain way of going about this, but the language was really good, and it said, oh, we failed to do this. We started this task, we failed to do it. These are the reasons why, you know, hands up. We've not done what we said we were going to do. That's why we've not done it. Let's move on from there. And I thought that, I know you're heavily involved in Sport England work, Ryan, with some of the systems work, systems change work that we do and whole systems approaches. But I think there is a change in the way that the major funders and organisations are thinking about things, and to see Sport England, a major client of ours, certainly putting their hands up and using the word we've failed to do this, but this is where we are, this is why we're where we are, and this is what we're going to do next. You know, I think if people are prepared to do that, if major funders are prepared to do that, then hopefully that will filter down through to other funders and organisations, and we can all start being a little bit more honest and transparent about what we can and can't do and where mistakes have been made, because it's always a frustration as an evaluator, and I'm sure you guys and the guys that have been involved in evaluation on the call would always feel, we always want people to share things that have not worked so well, because we want to unpick the learning from that and work out, you know, what we need to change when we do things in the future. But no one wants to share it, because even getting good practice out can be difficult sometimes. So getting things that have not gone well out, you know, can be absolutely impossible. But if we can talk people into doing that in a very positive way, by saying these are the learning points that we've taken from this, and actually as a result of this we're now moving on to work in a slightly different way, and that was based on that evidence, then I think that's a great idea. So I think we've just got to kind of encourage more transparency, and just more kind of flexible ways to share learning. I think if people from the funding level are starting to do that, then we need to kind of meet them in the middle and put our hands up when things have not gone well, but explain why and what we can do in the future to make a positive change.
It's not really a question, Max. The thought that follows on from that, I think reflection on something that we've done within Hallam the past couple of years or so. Just the act of adding equality, diversity, and inclusion statement into the grant grants triage form. So for regulated funding applications, triage. Yeah. And about 2 years ago, a section was added in there asking colleagues to explain the EDI considerations for the grant. And at first, so the reflection is, over the course of that time, I've certainly seen a change from the statements coming across as a bit of a tick box to complete, to actually, this we still see this from time to time, but to actually, when it becomes part of the system, systemic, and that question is regularly asked, the responses and the entries in that part of the formula are much more considered, they're much more thorough, and they're much more kind of authentic.
Yeah.
And I think there's something about making sure the questions are asked at the right time. It's just open, picking up on your own, transparent. It's there, it's clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought I'd share that observation. It's something that I've definitely seen in the past couple of years or so. When things are there, they're part of the system.
Yeah. And I think, you know, changing practices, you know, it does take time, and, you know, for things to become embedded as well is not there's no overnight fix on that. But I think Craig did say yesterday, didn't he, when he was talking about his experience of being VC in various organisations, that if EDI is not a priority at the top, it's very hard to integrate that. But I think there have been some really good examples within Hallam of just sharing practice, just raising awareness, education, opportunities for people to train in this area and to learn from other people. I think it's one of those things where people are scared of getting things wrong or saying the wrong thing, but I don't think we need be. We just need to know that the direction of travel we're taking is the right one, and just keep trying to embed those positive changes in things that we do and things that we deliver.
And to be understanding on those times where people do say slightly wrong thing or do it slightly wrong, it's that culture in which, you know, just needs to be explored.
Has anyone online got a comment or a question? No one's brave enough to have a camera on, so we can't see if these people are there or sat in the garden or getting a nice ice cream.
I found myself thinking about the sport world. And my question is, I don't know to what extent you know about the organisation and whether you work with it, but rugby league, I thought was an interesting. I went to the Rugby League World Cup last year, and I think the way that they approached the organisation of that tournament was exemplary in a lot of ways in terms of inclusion and the sort of parity to different forms of the game. Even, you know, I noticed that the commentators referred to what might previously be called the able-bodied game, but they refer to it as the running game. And I just, yeah. So I was interested in kind of whether you'd seen anything like that in other sports. And I guess that's an example of where maybe the whole sport has looked from the top, you know, right, root and branch, how they sport, how they present the sport.
That is an example when you have a visual in the sense that you try to appeal to people who are not interested in the sport. And say about education investment, sport investment. There was some investment that here we want to here with most of people in comparison with projects that appear to sport people. So to be mistaken, they're usually going to attract sport people that are interested in sport, but nobody would go there to practice sport if he's not interested in sport to start with. And what we found is that the investment-wise, the inclusive projects were much more cost efficient because they were cheaper and they had much wider appeal. That the one example was sport practice, and they were going to these inclusive projects. So the example was the facility in Lancaster University, where before the gym we have something like 7 gym, which is appeals to people that are not interested in sport. They pass and just introduce themselves to sport on their own without having to go into a very strong session. Planning facilities, and this is more to do with planning inside the city. So I don't know, Max, if there is anything like that that translates to outdoor. Because most of the presentation was about once you are in, you have the transparency, you have all these messages and the lessons for inclusiveness. But do they translate? Is there any policy to be inclusive to the people that are not in be attracted into sport?
Yeah, I think part of that is about framing the language, isn't it? And I was thinking about this when we were hearing the presentation on Hallam's sport and physical activity offer yesterday, and we were talking about things like Ponds Forge and the role that major facilities play, and rightly so need to play within the Hallam offer to students. But you know, those kind of facilities are a huge turn off to some people within society who don't have that confidence to walk into a sports hall or a gym and would never think that sport is for them. So I think one of the potential advantages of outdoor recreation more generally is that all kinds of physical activity, whether we're talking walking or dance, or those, you know, any of those kinds of activities that are away from your traditional definitions of sport, you know, outdoor swimming or leisure cycling, you know, taking the kids for a little bike ride, all those kind of things, you know, are really good ways of getting people, getting the social benefits and getting the physical benefits of people exercising, but without that tag of exercise or sport coming along with it. But it so often gets kind of overlooked when we're thinking about facilities and provision, we're thinking about clubs, etc. We very often revert back to those kind of traditional indoor sports and indoor facilities and those big sport offers that we've got, you know, without thinking about what the outdoor space, what the campus master plan needs to do in terms of kind of public spaces, connectivity between different elements of the sites. And there's a huge body of evidence about not only if you participate outdoors, you're not only getting the physical activity benefits, but you're also often getting the nature connection and some of those wider benefits of being in the outdoors. Ryan's nodding his head because he's a climber, so when he wants to do his sport, you know, he's out there connecting with his environment, you know, mastering his environment. And there are a lot, if you look at studies that compare somebody running on a treadmill to someone running outdoors, there's a whole raft of wider social benefits that come along with that. But I think it's often hard to get the profile of these up because it's not the first thing that springs to mind when people are perceiving what is needed for sport or physical activity. So
if I understand well, you emphasize informal elements, so you go for a walk in the street, by the street.
Yeah.
And working, etc. Do you link it after the formal participation? Is there a way for policy to do it?
It's hard, isn't it? Because it's kind of a loose sector. It's very hard to measure what goes on in a sector where clubs are not the main means of participation. So I know when we've done outdoor recreation work before, just trying to get those participation rates are nigh on impossible. And that's the reason in active travel as well, why there's always a much greater emphasis on cycling, because it's much easier to measure the number of people that cycle, because you can do things like you can put cameras up and you can have counts going through of people cycling. But when somebody's taken an active travel journey via walking, and what they've done is gone from their house, cut down a little general, gone to the shop and come back up, there's never a way to track that kind of journey. So I think, yeah, it is really difficult for informal sports to quantify what those participation levels are, and then to show the significance of that activity to feed that back up to policymakers. I was just picking up these guys. I was just saying, could they hear the discussion in the room? I think they're saying they could hear John a little bit, but not Themis. So I was just giving the apology on here that that's not very inclusive to the online audience in a seminar about inclusive practice. Just wanting to flag up that we were talking about examples of major sports that seem to be doing EDI very well, not just ticking a box. John was showing the example of rugby league. I don't know if anyone's got any kind of comments or examples that they know of from sports that are really excelling in this area.
They're really big on their language, so you can manually walk and it's also finishing or completion time instead of the run time, what you get. And they kind of started launching a park walk initiative where last October they changed all their logos from park run to park walk and had like specific volunteer positions for that. Yeah, I guess it's still a 5 kilometer walk you have to do. There's certain limitations to that.
That's great. I've just been writing something. We evaluated a park walk project in Ireland a couple of years back as part of Erasmus, a European funded project that we did on the benefits of outdoor sport. And park walk in Ireland's been going for quite a while. It seems a brilliant way of kind of transitioning some people into park run, but obviously some people have no interest in running, but just having the same benefits in terms of the regular activity, the social element of that as well. So that's really good to hear. Charlotte was just showing an example of park walk and how that might be coming through in prominence for those that can't hear the mic. Shall we draw to a close and give everyone 25 minutes of their afternoon back on this beautiful sunny day then, if there's no more? Can't see anything else in the chat, but thank you again for.
Can I just go to the next?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much for coming. For this
Do you want
presentation.
to
Yeah.
close it?
I don't want to end.
Shame.
It'll be terrifying. But thank you for coming. And the next seminar will be on the 27th of June, and that will be the last seminar for this year. And we'll have two presenters, Chris Platz and Alan Radok. And hopefully you can join us then. Thank you very much. Goodbye.